Thanks for joining me once again. Today we're taking a look at the Hobby Masters 1/72nd scale Sukhoi Su-27K T10K5, the Sea Flanker, carrying the board number Blue 79 circa 1995. This aircraft represents one of the most important early prototypes in the development of the carrier-based Su-33. While the Su-27K itself played a crucial role in the development of the Soviet naval aviation during a time of major technological and geopolitical change. What makes this aircraft particularly significant is that it was far more than just another experimental flanker variant. It played a crucial role in demonstrating that carrier-based fighter operations were both practical and achievable for the Soviet Navy. From ski jump testing to early carrier trials and systems evaluations, Blue 79 also helped shape the evaluation of the aircraft's carrier operating characteristics. And that brings us to a quick note for the viewers who make these videos possible. So, I've noticed that more and more subscribers have been joining the channel lately, and I just want to take a moment to thank you all for your support. To every one of you who has chosen to join and support this channel and invest your time in the content I share. Holy cow, it's been a really down to earth experience for me to start this channel, share these stories with you all, and have your support along the way. Yeah, thank you immensely. And for those of you who are new here, my goal with this channel is simple, basically to showcase these models and share the stories behind them. Military aviation has been a lifelong passion of mine. Which is why it's privileged to be able to share that passion with all of you. And that passion is one of the main reasons I started this channel in the first place. Folks, it's more than just displaying models. I also want to bring their stories to life and share the people, events, and history that make them special. And it's incredibly rewarding to know that there are others out there who enjoy these stories as much as I do. And I'm glad, to have you all on board. And I look forward to sharing many more stories with all of you in the future as time permits. Now, without further ado, and as always, before we take a closer look at the model itself, we've got to spend a little time on the history behind the aircraft because once we understand what this aircraft represents, it really adds another layer of appreciation to what Hobbymaster has done here. So, with that, let's get started. The story of the Su-27K begins in a rather unusual place, not aboard an aircraft carrier at sea, but at a time when the Soviet Union was racing to establish a true carrier based aviation capability. And what emerged from that effort would become one of the most impressive naval fighters ever developed. The Su 27K, known by NATO as the Flanker D, was later redesignated as the Su 33 and eventually entered service under that designation. As the story moves forward, the Su 27K was developed specifically for Soviet carrier operations, and it was closely tied to the Project 1143 aircraft carrier program that ultimately produced the Admiral Kuznetsov. This aircraft represents one of the most important achievements in the Soviet naval aviation among the early prototypes that paved the way for the aircraft's development, and it was the fifth prototype in a development program of Sukhoi. The T-10K-5, known by its side number Blue 79, occupies a special place in aviation history. This was one of the aircraft used during the testing and evaluation phase of carrier-based fighter program. Also, Blue 79 helped demonstrate that the Soviet Union could successfully operate a high performance fighter from an aircraft carrier. So, during the 1980s, the Soviet Navy sought to expand its capabilities beyond coastal defense and establish a true blue water fleet. Until then, Soviet aircraft carriers, such as the predecessors of the Admiral Kuznetsov, were mainly helicopter carriers or VTOL capable ships, rather than full fixed wing carrier platforms like those operated by the US Navy. So, to achieve this goal, it required a carrier based fighter capable of providing air superiority over naval forces. Sukhoi's answer was the Su-27K, a navalized version of a highly successful Su-27 flanker. The first flight of the Su-27K prototype was conducted by the Design Bureau's test pilot Viktor Pigachev on August 17, 1987. However, official testing of the Su-27K took place between 1991 and 1994, during which the aircraft underwent extensive evaluation. The aircraft incorporated numerous modifications designed specifically for carrier operations, including reinforced landing gear, folding wings, canards for improved low speed handling, and an arrestor hook for carrier landings. In addition, the T-10K-5 Blue 79 was among the pre production aircraft built to test these new features. It's worth noting that the Su-27K and Su-33 share a nearly identical external airframe while reflecting their common design lineage. So, at this stage, the airframe already featured many of the distinctive characteristics that would later define the operational Su 33. Its canards improved maneuverability during takeoff and landing, while its enlarged wings increased lift at lower speeds. So, from an operational standpoint, these modifications were essential for operating from the Soviet Navy's new aircraft carrier, Admiral Kuznetsov. One of the most significant moments in the Blue 79's career came during the intensive flight testing program conducted in the late 1980s and the early 1990s. The testing program included procedures that simulated aircraft carrier operations, including ski jump takeoffs and arrested landings. Unlike the United States Navy, so the Soviet Navy's carrier design philosophy relied on ski jump ramps rather than steam catapults. That said, so arguably the Soviet approach to carrier aviation was quite different from the US Navy. But here's a question for you. Do you think the ski jump launches are better than catapult launches? Well, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Having said that, let's move on. Aircraft such as the Blue 79 demonstrated that a heavy air superiority fighter could successfully launch from a ski jump while still carrying a useful combat load. The aircraft also contributed valuable data that helped engineers refine Su 27K's aerodynamic performance and carrier handling characteristics. Each flight expanded understanding of how a large fighter behaved in demanding maritime environment. As a result, the lessons learned from prototypes like Blue 79 directly influenced the final configuration of the Su-33 production fleet. So, from both an rational and technological standpoint, the Su-27K represented the pinnacle of the Soviet fighter design at the time. The aircraft was powered by twin Saturn AL-31F turbofan engines. Basically, it combined exceptional speed, agility, and range. It also inherited the Su-27's impressive maneuverability while gaining the structural strength necessary for repeated carrier operations. So, Even by modern standards, the Su 33 remains an imposing aircraft capable of carrying a wide variety of air to air and air to surface weapons. However, when it comes to the aircraft's loadout, it's important to note that the Su 27K never actually carried a large anti ship missile like the KH 41 Musket on a real life operational service. It was never adapted. While Hobby Master depicts it this way, uh, I think this configuration is likely intended for display purposes. This is more of a, shall we say, a modeling interpretation or what if configuration. So, in a real world use, the Su 27K was not equipped with this type of large, heavy missile. As the KH 41 Musket was primarily a ship launch coastal defense system, it was not commonly air launched operationally from the Su 33 or the Su 27K. That said, it's still cool addition from a modeling perspective, in my opinion. And I like it how it looks on the Su 27K, especially given the Su 27 fairly large fuselage. Um, Even if it's not historically accurate, it's still acceptable. Now, in terms of the aircraft's loadout, the Su 27K was primarily an air superiority platform, typically armed with a mix of R 73 and R 27 missiles, with only limited capacity for additional stores, depending on the mission profile. But anyway, if someone tells you that this aircraft actually carried the KH 41 Musket in operational service, well, they're probably selling you a bit of spin. Nevertheless, today the Su 27K Blue 79 remains a fascinating example of experimental naval aviation from a time of major transition in aircraft development. It captures the point where Soviet design ambition met the realities of the post Soviet era, and when engineers continued pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Even as the world around them was changing dramatically, although the Su 27K it never entered operational service in its prototype form. However, the aircraft played an important role in the development process that ultimately led to the Su 33. Its testing helped validate key aspects of carrier base operations for the flanker family, and it covers everything from structural reinforcement to deck handling and flight performance in a naval environment. So, rationally speaking, without the Su 27K, the Su 33 simply would not exist. In many ways, aircraft like Blue 79 represents the bridge between concept and reality. It reminds us that not every machine is designed for frontline combat, which is true. Some exist to prove what was possible, and that's what makes it so interesting today. It's not just about what it was, but what it contributed to. Blue 79 remains a reminder of an ambitious engineering effort during a time of major transition in aviation history, and it has firmly earned its place in the story of carrier based fighter development. However, the story of the Blue 79 did not end in Russia after being acquired by China in the early 2000s. So, the airframe played a notable role in the country's early carrier aviation efforts, serving as a reference for the development of the Shenyang J 15 as China's first carrier capable fighter based on the flanker lineage. Basically, the J 15 reflects that inherited design foundation, even though it was significantly modified and domestically produced. In many ways, Blue 79's journey illustrates how Cold War era engineering continued to shape modern naval aviation, leaving a legacy that extended far beyond its original operational role. And there you have it, folks. The story of Blue 79. This chapter marks the conclusion of its remarkable journey. Now, let's see what Hobbymaster has brought to the table with this release. So, for aviation enthusiasts and diecast aircraft collectors, few aircraft possess the same combination of power, elegance, and historical significance as the Su-27K, or the whole flanker family, I should say. Hobbymaster's HA6051 in 1/72nd scale, the model captures the real aircraft's appearance very well, offering collectors an opportunity to own a miniature tribute to one of the most fascinating prototypes ever developed by the Sukhoi Design Bureau. Hobbymaster depicts the Su-27K Blue 79 as it appeared in 1995 and includes the massive KH-41 Musket anti-ship missile, which is one of the most formidable naval strike weapons ever carried by a fighter aircraft. Now, as I've mentioned before, this isn't the aircraft's historically accurate configuration, but it still looks pretty cool, folks. This is a gigantic missile. I mean, if this were the real thing being carried by an aircraft, this has to be one of the biggest pieces of gear you could draw from an aircraft. Just look at the size of this thing. If I were a pilot sitting in the cockpit and saw this missile coming off my aircraft, that would scare a crap out of me. I'd be sitting there thinking, good grief, that's a lot of missile headed towards someone, right? But anyway, what immediately stands out about this model is its attention to details. Hobbymaster really nailed the distinctive look of the Su-27K prototype, including the aircraft's enlarged wings, prominent canards, of course, twin engine layout. The Blue 79 markings are sharply applied, very crisp and clear. There's no washed out colors around. While the naval camouflage scheme captures the classic flanker paint pattern that's instantly recognizable to flanker fans, in fact, I do like how the naval camouflage, it is a shade darker and more pronounced on this model. It really makes the flanker look sharp and striking. All the little details from the panel lines and antennas to the landing gear, external stores, and cockpit detailing really help bring this model to life. Everything looks crisp and well executed overall, as I understand it. This is a very well done model, and the gear doors and detailing underneath the fuselage are nicely done, especially around the twin engine section, which is always a focal point on a flanker family. The loadout is pretty straightforward with this release. Weapons and accessories are really well detailed, usually representing a standard air to air loadout with R-73 and R-27 missiles. They're well molded and easy to attach. So far, I haven't run into any fit or tolerance issues with this particular example, and chances are yours will be just as good. Hobbymaster also includes extra antennas, especially the dorsal one around the cockpit area, which is really nice in case you accidentally break one. So you've got yourself a spare ready part. Just take it out of the box and just plug and play, which is awesome. There are no moving parts on this model. The canards and wings are static, they don't pivot, and there are no folding wings or anything like that. But personally, I think that's a good thing. The fewer moving parts a model has, the fewer things that can potentially break, right? Also, the asymmetric dorsal speed brake on this flanker is non deployable as it's molded shut. Um, that's worth noting if this is something you care about, but for me, it's not an issue at all. As many flanker collectors know, tooling variations between releases are fairly common. However, on the naval Su-27K slash Su-33, uh, the dorsal air brake was deleted due to structural reinforcement and folding wing mechanisms required for carrier based operations. So instead, the Su 33 achieves aerodynamic braking by differential deflection of its control surfaces, such as the stabilators and other flight control surfaces, rather than by a dedicated dorsal air brake. Therefore, Hobbymaster's decision not to include this feature is technically accurate and, in my view, makes it much closer to the real aircraft. Also, one thing worth noting is the labeling inconsistency that sometimes comes with some releases. So, this release being marked in some cases as the Russian Air Force circa 1995, even though the aircraft itself is clearly tied to the naval aviation development. Well, it's not something that impacts the model's presentation, but it may be worth noting for collectors who are extremely particular about accuracy. Uh, it's not a major deal, though. This is just something to be aware of. So, all things considered here, it's a high fidelity model with excellent attention to detail and accuracy. At the end of the day, this is a model that knows exactly what it wants to be rather than focusing on gimmicks or, other excessive features. A visually impressive, perfect presentation on a shelf. Indeed, this is one of the most important carrier based flanker developments out there. So, once again, without the aircraft Blue 79, the Su 33 likely wouldn't have reached operational service. And for collectors interested in Cold War and post Cold War naval aviation, this release is well worth considering. It's definitely a unique release with a great deal of historical significance behind it. I also have to say, I really like this release, especially the inclusion of the massive KH 41 missile. I think for a lot of collectors, that's actually one of the main reasons they picked up this model because it adds a real sense of scale and presence on the shelf. And as you can see here in this shot, I've removed the missile from the pylon. That's actually something I do with some of my Hobby Master models. I like to take the missiles off so I can display them separately. This is just one of my habits that have been around for a while. The good thing is that they're easy to remove, and if I ever want to put them back on, I can do that without any problems. Which is that says something, right? That tells you like Hobby Master accessories are pretty adorable. That's just my personal preference when it comes to displaying the weapon accessories. In this case, I placed the musket missile on a push cart only for display purposes. Well, just keep in mind that the push cart is not included with the model. It would have been nice if Hobbymaster, had included those kind of accessories. But hey, you can't have everything, right? Anyway, so right now, this model is still available from a few vendors. I want to say is not terribly expensive. If you like it, I honestly wouldn't wait too long because, as we all know, these things they tend to sell out quickly. And so once they're gone, yeah, that's the end of the story there, right? Good luck, champs. So if you're into it, just go ahead and pull the trigger and make it happen. Ultimately, the Hobbymaster HA 6051 is more than just another die-cast aircraft model. It's a tribute to an important prototype that helped shape the future of Russian aviation. So, this model is a great addition to my collection and will proudly join my other flankers on the display shelf. I'm happy to have it in my collection. I'm even happier to be able to share its story with you today. Folks, I've always been a fan of Russian fighter aircraft, even though I'm more of a US Air Force guy. Um, I've always admired Russian fighters for their advanced design, impressive capabilities, and the whole thing, just from the way they looks, they looks so handsome, especially those flankers. I truly adore those flankers, and the role they've played in aviation history. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Thanks for watching. If you're into military aviation history and diecast model reviews, consider subscribing. That way, you won't miss an update. Also, it really helps the channel and allows me to keep producing more videos like this. Thanks again for tuning in. This is Patriot signing off. And as always, I'll catch you in the next review.